130, but you had 10-year rates paying a 115, so it's really pretty flat. You had a little bit of dip down there in the 2 and 5 year area. But right now we've got a pretty steep yield curve. And that's really given us an indication that the market thinks rates are going to rise in the future. Right now, although this is a snapshot from the end of February, 10-year rates at that time were 141, and today they're 155. So rates are starting to rise, particularly on the longer end of the yield curve that are further out a little bit in duration. Now, to give you an idea, the 2-year was at 13 basis points, and today it was at 17 basis points. So the 2 years come up about 4 basis points, but the much longer end in the 10-year area has come up quite a bit. In fact, it's come up, it was only about 1% at year end, and now it's come up almost 50 basis points, or 0.5% in that time period. So that's a real indication that the market anticipates rates to be higher in the future. Well, why does the market anticipate rates to be higher? If you look at the lower graph, the Federal Reserve doesn't seem to be moving. It's held interest rates at 0 to 25 basis points since the start of the pandemic in February last year. Doesn't seem to be moving. Let's shoot down to the next slide, Robert. Don't worry about the slide on the top, but let's look at that slide on the bottom. That's GDP. And the big change in the gross domestic product, which is really the broadest measure of economic activity. So that's everything all thrown in together for the entire country. Well, let's do a little review. Last year, the first quarter was down 3.4%. That was just the start of the pandemic. It really only got going in March. So, but the second quarter was big. The second quarter dropped 31.4%. That was the largest drop in a quarter we'd ever recorded since we had been recording these kind of economic numbers. But talk about the V-shaped recovery, just like it dropped 31% in the second quarter, the third quarter, it actually rose 33%. So it went down hard, V-shaped recovery. You see that in the graph. It rose back up. Now, that rise of 33%, you have to remember that's starting from 1/3 lower because it already dropped 1/3 in the first quarter. The last quarter actually increased about 4%. So all in last year, in 2020, pardon me, the economy was down about 3.5%. At this time last year, if we'd have said, oh, the economy, yeah, we're going to go through a big recession, but it's only going to be down 3.5% for the entire year in 2020, people would have said we're crazy, because people were predicting that 2020 would be down 15 or 16 or 17% because we shut down the entire economy. So it really has come back quite a long way, particularly in the third quarters and the fourth quarter. The first quarter of this year, we're projecting somewhere around 4.5 to 5.5% growth. That's pretty good for a first quarter. Usually first quarters can be a little slow. We're looking at 6.5% for the entire year of 2021. And you're starting to see it as states start to open up a little bit more and start to relax their restrictions as their COVID cases go down. Economic activity is picking up. Let's drop down to the next slide, 8, Robert. And we like to look at the graph on the top. That's the Institute of Supply Management, and it's a purchasing managers index. So it surveys all these purchasing managers, both on a manufacturing side and on the non-manufacturing or service side, which is really the larger part of the economy right now. And it's a diffusion index. So anything above 50 means it's growing. Anything below 50 means it's shrinking. Again, you see that very clear V-shaped recovery where both manufacturing and services went down hard in the middle of 2020, but came right back up. And look, they're as strong as they've ever been in the last couple of years. And even manufacturing, which had been weak before, when President Trump was having the tariff fight with China, manufacturing had been weak. In fact, in late 19 and mid 19, it was actually shrinking and contracting. Right now, manufacturing is at a 17-year high, so it's very good, very strong, but it's not a very large part of the economy anymore. And in fact, the service sector still remains strong itself. So the economy is looking good. We like this Purchasing Managers Index because it's predictive. It goes out and looks out sort of where are things in those sectors going to be in 6 months from now. So it has some predictive value. We like that. But even with all of this strong economic activity and the improvements that we're seeing this spring, if you look at the bottom graph, that's inflation, both with and without food and energy. And it really hasn't been very robust. Inflation right now is only running at about 1.4%. Now, we do anticipate if the economy is going to run at around 6 or 6.5% this year, that we might start to see some inflationary activity, because what will happen is it'll be a supply problem. You won't be able to get enough supplies to the economy, and that'll cause prices to go up. It's just people's demand for goods and services is going to be so strong and so fast, I think, in its recovery, is that we are likely to see some sort of inflationary activity. The Federal Reserve feels, however, that it's probably mostly temporary. It's not a situation where we're going to go back to when I started my career in the early 80s, where we had really double-digit inflation. And that was a real problem for the economy. This kind of inflation, although the Fed would like to see inflation run around 2%, and we are below that target, and that is one of the Fed's goals, is to get it up over 2%. We think that's going to happen this spring as more and more states open up for economic activity. Let's drop down one more slide. On slide 9, Robert, the most important slide is that slide on the bottom. We probably have more slides in here than we have time to go through, and so I'll probably skip over a number of them, but you can read them and look at them later on. I mean, this slide is very important because it's a slide of economic activity. This one happened to go through January. We have some updates from last week with the February numbers, and the non-farm payroll actually rose in the month of February by 379,000 new jobs. And the January numbers which were initially pretty weak. They were initially reported as only up 49,000 new jobs. Actually, that got revised upward with the February numbers to 166,000 new jobs. Unemployment rate, which was 6.3 at the end of January, dropped down to 6.2%. And if you think that this pace is going to continue, which we do, and we think that as more and more of these economies open up, more and more of the jobs are going to come back. You've got continuing claims, which come out every Thursday, of about 4.3 million. So you can see if you're adding almost 400,000 jobs a month, you're going to start to drop that continuing claims number pretty rapidly if we can continue that for the next 3 or 4 months. I mean, that's pretty good numbers. If we continue at this pace of adding new jobs like we did in February, and I think we will because more and more states are opening up, we're going to get a lot more employment. And these employment numbers are going to be robust. So that's really one of the Fed's drivers for they've got interest rates very, very low. They're down at the all-time lows. And in order for them to start to raise interest rates, they're going to need economic activity to pick up. They're going to need inflation to be a little bit over 2%, and they're going to need the unemployment numbers to get back down below where they were when this whole pandemic started, which was down at 3.5%. So if we could drop down 2 slides, Robert, to that slide. Perfect. One of the things that I did want to talk about is that even though we have a lot of people out of work, one of the things that we have done through these massive governmental transfer payments that we just got another stimulus package passed. The first several stimulus packages, including the one we passed in December, they're not recorded on here, but look what happened to personal income in that upper graph on the right. Yes, people's employment compensation went down, and obviously the stock market went down, at least initially, but people's total income actually didn't drop, because some people made more because of the government transfer payments. Now, that was big in April and May and June, but started to taper off, as we know, towards the fall. But then we had another round of stimulus checks. So the stimulus checks that went out in December and the ones that are going out now are going to cause this phenomena to reoccur all over again. So this has been the first recession where, yes, people became unemployed, but they didn't actually drop as much in personal income. And in fact, if we drop down to the next slide on page 12, we'll see on the upper left that there's been actually a rise in excess savings. Some of that is from people who are still employed and aren't going on vacation anywhere. And so they've saved a lot of money. And some of that is from people who, because some of these stimulus checks actually got saved and went into savings. So we know that there's a big pent up savings of over $1 trillion in savings. So this is also why we think that economic activity is going to be so strong once people have the opportunity to get out, move around, start to see relatives, start to go on vacation. Some of that leisure sector that has been so hard hit is going to come back, and it's going to come back in big force. We were doing a review last week for one of our clients. It's the city of Juneau, Alaska, and things are going to be rough this year because they're not expecting. They have a big tourism industry and they have a lot of cruise ships come through. Well, this year they're not expecting a lot of cruise ships by summer, but they're anticipating twice as many cruise ships in 2022. So we think that the leisure sector is going to come back. If you could drop down one more slide, Robert. And that upper right slide is the number of we lost about 9 million jobs during the recession. But some of those people actually dropped out of the workforce. So some people did actually retire, and we saw that from the drop in the participation rate. But by far, of those 9 million jobs that we lost, and we still have about 4.3 on continuing claims for unemployment. So we know that some people left the employment market. And I actually had a number of my finance directors and clients actually were old enough to retire, and a number of them did retire this year. So, but we know that the biggest number that's still outstanding are in that leisure sector. Now that we're getting shots out and we're getting some vaccinations out, and you're starting to see states start to open up again for that leisure sector, and that's restaurants, that's airlines, that's hotels. And we had the biggest, last week, we had the biggest number of people on airplanes that we've had, I think, since Christmas. So over 1 million people, and it wasn't a holiday weekend. So this is the biggest non-holiday weekend since sometime last summer. So we see airline activity picking up, we see restaurants picking up, and we're going to start to see some of the other leisure sector pick up as people get vaccinated. So with that, let's scoot down to the first graph of the portfolio. I'll leave these other slides for you to, maybe down to slide 22, Robert. For anyone to review, who wants to review, there's some interesting slides in there, but that's great, thank you. So long and short of it, economic activity rebounded big time in the latter half of last year is continuing strong into this year and is probably going to gain momentum and speed. People are going to be going back to work, we think, by June. If the president's right, all adults are supposed to have a vaccination by the end of May. Well, suppose it's even the end of June, then you're going to have people back to work in the next 3 or 4 months. So we really think there has been some scarring. I mean, if someone worked at a restaurant and all of a sudden that restaurant's closed, that's going to take a while for that person they're going to have to find employment someplace else. And it might take someone else to come in to open that restaurant up. So some of that economic activity won't spring back as fast, but it's looking very, very good for this year. If we look at the portfolio and we look at the yield on the portfolio versus the return on the 2-year treasury, you can see we have been outperforming the 2-year treasury since mid 2019, and we outperformed the 2-year treasury all last year, even though we've been bringing the portfolio in shorter and shorter because you've got the cash needs with the city hall and building the city hall. So we've been bringing this portfolio in, as you're going to see a couple slides down, much shorter and shorter. But we'll talk a little bit more about performance in a minute. Let's drop down to slide 24, Robert. You can see the portfolio size right now is just under 16 million. We've got a considerable amount of that, about a third of it's in cash, waiting to be used. And the other part is very short. So the total portfolio is down around, I think, mostly closer to 90 days or so in duration. So it's not very long. And if we can go down to slide 25, this shows our performance, and I like to look at it on this basis. It's a yield basis because we tend to hold all the bonds to maturity. We tend not to sell bonds prior to maturity to try and capture capital gains. And while we were behind the 2-year treasury in 2018, because we had shortened the portfolio up then too, we matched the 2-year treasury in 19, and we far outperformed it in 2020, almost by 1%. So the portfolio did what it was supposed to do, even though we've been shortening it up for the last couple of years as we're getting prepared for building the city hall and paying for that. So if we drop down, let's not dwell too much on 27. Let's drop down to 29. We look at the portfolio asset allocation. Right now, as I said, there's about $16 million in the portfolio. About a third of it is in cash. About 30% of it is in corporate bonds, which are really the best performing bonds in the portfolio. And in government agencies, we've got just over a third as well. So, and Robert and I've been working on keeping it short, and we've got some of those invested, but a lot of them aren't invested very long. And we've got a number of them coming off even next week. So you can see the maturity distribution on page 31. We only have about 18% of the portfolio out over 90 days, and 80% of the portfolio is available in the next 90 days. So we've got it focused short end because we know you've got some cash needs and you've got some things coming up, and we want to be able to meet those obligations. Let's go down to 33, Robert. And you can see these are the corporate names we've got, all names that you recognize. JP Morgan Chase, the biggest bank in the country. You've got Wells, Berkshire Hathaway, big insurance company, Caterpillar, Bank of America, also Pittsburgh National Corp, which is another big bank, and Toyota and Oracle. So all big names that you recognize on the corporate space, all high quality, but relatively short term. And the other if we drop down one more page, you see the rest is in federal agencies from, the Home Loan Bank or Federal Farm Credits or Freddie Mac. And we try to keep those a little bit in Fannie Mae. And we try to keep those a little diversified. If we drop down to the yield report on page 35.
David, sorry, I had a question. Yes. I know we had discussed last year that there was a certain credit rating that we needed to stay above. And
yes,
is that the same for this year? Have there been any changes with that, or does it expand our world and what we can invest into? Or
no, the credit rating hasn't changed. You're at the max by state statute, and the state statute hasn't changed. So it's A- or better. So it's firmly in the investment grade camp. In fact, investment grade goes down to BBB. But you aren't allowed to go down that far by state statute. So that really hasn't changed. And the securities are a mix of, AA and single A rated securities. If we go down to the yield report, which is on page 36, you'll see we don't have a yield in there for the custodian's money market fund, but the corporate bonds are yielding 84 basis points, and the agencies are at 73 basis points, and that's compared, as I said, to the 2-year Treasury today. These are much shorter, obviously, but the 2-year Treasury today is at 16 basis points. So interest rates are low. But they are starting to rise. And as that yield curve gets steeper, as I pointed out earlier, that's an indication the market thinks rates are going to go up in the future. Now, I have to say, the Federal Reserve has said that they're going to keep interest rates low through the end of 2023. So rates are going to be down. My guess is, though, that the market is going to force rates up, even without Fed activity, through most of this year. And we should see the 10-year ending the year, it's at 1.5 now. It should end the year close to 2%. And the 5-year should end at close to 1%. I think that the 2-year Treasury should end up in the upper 20s, maybe close to 30% or 30 basis points. So they're going to rise all year, but we're not going to have a dramatic shift until the Federal Reserve steps in and really decides to start to raise interest rates. And with that, I'll take more questions. There's a GASB report in here. If we want to go look at that, it's on page 38, Robert. And that has all of the ratings on it. Right in the middle, you'll see the S&P rating and the Moody's ratings on all the corporate bonds. Of course, the bigger holdings are primarily in agency securities, but we've got some holdings, and there's Berkshire Hathaway there, there's on page 38, and Oracle. And then you've got Wells and Bank of America and Caterpillar. So. And with that, I'm trying to think. We're down to disclosure. So anything else I can tell you about the portfolio or our strategy? With most portfolios, yours is a different situation because you need a lot of the cash, but most of the portfolios we've been buying in the 2- and 3-year area because we think the Federal Reserve is going to be on hold for quite a while. So we're kind of doing that in what we call riding down the yield curve, which is we get a little bit more money by going out in that 2 or 3 area, and we ladder the securities out, and then we just kind of let them ride down and mature. Generally, our portfolios for operating accounts, for city operating accounts, are around 1.9 years in duration, just under 2 years. Right now, they're at about 175 or 170, 1.7 years. So they're a little shorter. We're probably going to start running them closer to about 1.5 years. And that means that the securities, because it's a shorter duration, the securities will turn over more quickly. As interest rates rise, the securities will reprice in and will pick up a little bit higher rate every time they come off, every time they mature. So is there anything else I can tell anyone about the portfolio?
I'm curious, Robert, how low is this this pool of money going to go over the course of the next 12 months?
Well, I think as we get closer, probably to July, I think it might get to maybe 9 million, just for the use of cash. But in my staff report, I had mentioned that as we get closer to the finality of the town center on this that portion, we're going to start reinvesting our investments into longer term years. As far as right now we're in the shorter duration, but we'll go into longer durations. So we'll take it probably between, if it's about 16 million, take it about between 9 and 10 million, and then that what's remaining will get reinvested into hopefully a year out durations. Right now we're doing about 6 months to 8 months out on reinvesting, and then as they get mature, we use that as we have that cash ready for use.
Robert, this is Elizabeth. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are anticipating that we are only going to deplete our 16 million investment portfolio by what is it, $8 million or so, getting down to about 9 million in July. Why would we not be taking that 8 million, or a conservative additional 5 million or something, and investing it in the longer term investments now, if we don't think we're going to need that, so that we're just not, it seems like we're playing with all of our marbles on a short-term basis, when we might be better off with some longer-term holds, a portion of it. I'm not an investment expert, but just kind of, maybe it's a stupid question.
No, great question. And the anticipation is, as we have some that are maturing currently, we have one next week, I believe on March 15th. I believe that's the Oracle. That's one that we'll probably look to reinvest at a longer term, and probably take that one into a term that's into calendar year 22, maybe into May of next year, and then like David mentioned, usually it's about 1.9, almost 2 years of duration, but now cities are going shorter. We'll probably go between probably 1.7 duration with that, but that's what we're starting to look at is as some mature. We have a couple maturing the next month. I think we have about 3 or 4, and we will get those extended, and then as the new ones come out, probably in June or July, that mature, we'll look at those and use those as cash needs. So that's the plan. Mm-hmm.
So Robert, just to add on to the question, what is that bucket that we're going to push out to the 1.7 1-year 9 frame? Is it the 5 million, or what is that numerical amount that we're going to push out to the later time frame?
It's right now it's the corporate bonds that are maturing. So it's between the 5. There's about 5 million in corporate bonds, and then the rest is in government securities. So I would have to say between about 6 and 9 million of that will probably mature. We'll reinvest, or at least half of it. So let's say there's 16 million right now, so at least 8 will reinvest as they mature. And I think the ones that mature currently in next month, those are the ones that will take out longer. So right now that's about, I think, almost 3 million that will get reinvested, and then as the new ones mature, we'll kind of see where we're at in cash wise, and then reinvest, most likely reinvest those.
So you think we're going to try and work on it over the next couple of months, and that's probably good, because buying them all in one chunk is never good. We wanted to kind of diversify in and out. So we've got a couple coming off next week, and we start moving some of those out to be a little longer. If you think you're going to be able to meet some more of your cash flow needs, we've got a good piece in cash right now. We're trying to hold that, no more than 6 million. So we've been pretty successful at that. So, and we did buy some longer bonds. We did buy some longer bonds with the most recent maturities. So we've got a few more coming off, and we can start to move those out and a little bit further out in duration.
Yeah, we just currently we purchased an Apple bond that goes into February of 2022. So and we anticipate to do that, and kind of with the corporate bonds, because that's where most of the we get more of the interest payment on. We're trying to make sure that we continue to capture the corporate bonds. And right now, the way corporate bonds are is they're more available as the longer the duration you go out, is there's more availability of that. So as we have some investments maturing, like the Oracle next week, we'll look to another corporate bond, and I think we'll have a better opportunity because we're going to take that one longer, as a longer duration. So those corporate bonds tend to be in durations of a year or longer. So we'll be able to capture some of that.
But it looks like we're not going to run our general. I mean, I realize there's more than general fund money in these two, in LAIF and
correct,
and with Cutwater, but it looks like we're not going to run our general fund nearly as low as we once predicted. Is that right?
Seems like that.
Correct. We'll probably, and again, it's just a cash flow issue. And it just depends on our expenditure needs at the time and how our cash is coming in. So yeah, our general fund, we will have, we'll still use our general fund reserves, but we're still unallocated balance, but we'll still have enough reserve requirement that we'll meet. So we'll still meet a reserve requirement where we anticipated. I think we anticipate about 1.5 to million above our reserve requirement, and we're about meeting that as currently right now in our cash flow.
Sorry to jump in again, but this was pretty much to answer Mr. Polito's comment about not depleting our general fund as low as we had first expected. Was it really basically because we got the COP and we've used that money to fund the project instead of using our general fund money to fund the project as we were going along? So we haven't depleted as much of our general fund money that we, without the COP, we would have, and then there would have been a really, dire situation.
Yeah, I understand that, but it still looks to me like we've got a lot more money than we thought we were going to have, and we're going to continue to have a lot more money than we thought we were going to have.
More is better, I think, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, I like money.
Yeah.
But we're not spending it.
Correct. And I think it goes in hand. Getting more revenue than we anticipate, but then also the expenditures. If we're not, if we're expending below what we budgeted, that's a good thing. Meaning that our excess is better than we projected, because one, our revenues are higher, and two, our expenditures are coming in lower than what we anticipated. ERAF is one thing that we anticipated this year about 1.4 million, and we got 1.8 million in that. And then property taxes, the increase. So it's a two-prong approach. Revenues coming in higher, but we try to maintain our expenditures in hoping that we do not get to that budget expenditures, but that we're below our budgeted expenditures.
Robert, there's a slide in your next item on the agenda in the PowerPoint presentation that addresses Mr. Polito's question about what the general fund balance is and projected to be.
Right.
in the coming years.
Mhm. Yeah, on the 5-year forecast. Yeah, and it shows we're meeting the needs for the town center, and we'll have an unallocated balance in the next coming years that we'll be able to look to address future needs and priorities of the council.
Robert, did you want to talk about that one change in the policy before I left, or did you want to?
Oh, yeah, please explain that, because it seems like a reverse, request to me.
Well, yes, this policy that we believe one minor change is the policy due to liquidity needs with the town center project. We were recommending that the limit on money market funds increase from 20 up to 50%. And the reason why it was just adjusting the limit to alleviate compliance with the ability to maintain our cash in the money market fund, and also so we can staff can actually have enough funds to maintain in our investments. I guess it's mainly to make sure that we comply with what we can have in our money market and what we have in our investments. And so that the reason was to increase it from 20% to 50%. But being now that we might start reinvesting our investments, we will be, the need probably isn't up to 50%, maybe increase it to maybe 30 or 35%, just for in case in the future that we do have to use our investments as they mature, that we may maintain compliance with our money market account.
And you wanted to just make sure that as you're paying these final bills and you need to have that cash on hand, that don't like violate the policy for a short period of time while you're waiting for the invoice to come in, but you wanted to have the cash there and make it available type of thing. Correct. Right now we keep running up on that as a percentage of the portfolio, and we're trying not to do a violation.
Correct. And that's why we have mentioned not to exceed up to 50%. It may not be that we will get up to 50%, but just it provides a buffer if for any reasons we're turning investments into liquidity, and as it's in our money market as we need it, it's not it's complying with our policy.
It was just this is Anne. It seems like a very big jump to me, and I'm just wondering, following along the mayor's question, do we really need to push it up that far? I personally would be much more comfortable if we increased it from 20 to 30 or 20 to 40, but 20 to 50, I mean, you're more than doubling it. Do we really need that room?
Makes me uncomfortable to have all that the ability to have that much cash in a money market fund, just, that big jump, but don't want to violate policy. But I mean, I agree with Ann.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah, yes.
I'm sorry, I was going to go in the same direction, which is, I assume there was a policy reason we wanted it at 20%. And now you're coming in and basically saying there's a practical reason we need to bump it up to 50%. And it feels like there's kind of a disconnect. If there's a good policy reason to keep it at 20%, the fact that we're having practical problems doesn't seem like a good answer to that. So could you just talk about that? Why did we want it at 20%?
The policy at 20%, that was to ensure that mostly on the investment opportunities, that's where it was at 20%. And this policy has been in effect for several years. Back in 2000, I believe 11, when the policy was created, and so at that time it was to ensure that there was continuing investment avenues for the town, and to ensure that the money market didn't have so much cash. So now fast forward to where we're at presently. The need was to use investments that mature for this capital project. So, and having our discussion right now, I believe, I think, instead of 20 to 50%, I agree. It seems like a massive jump, but I think somewhere, along the lines of maybe 30 or 40%, or a number up to, not a cap number. Currently, right now, it's capped at 20%.
So yeah, I was the one that said to Robert, maybe we should bump it to 50%, but I was under the impression that we were going to use almost the entire fund balance, which is the discussion we were having maybe last year.
Yeah.
So since you've done those certificates of participation, I think they're probably, you're not going to need to have as much cash on hand, because at one point it was going to be, you were going to spend down almost the entire balance. Well, that would have meant you'd have needed 100% of your money available to go into the money market account, even if it was down, even if you had $1 million left, you needed to have a high percentage in the money market fund to meet the bills. So now that you're not going to have as much, and you're starting to even think the other direction, maybe we don't even need the policy change. We'll limp along at 20% for the next couple months. And if I think we can keep enough stuff invested short term to meet all those obligations, Robert, and then if we're starting to invest longer term, then maybe we're not going to be bumping up against that 20% like we have been.
Correct.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I'm yeah. And it was a suggestion on the staff side, a minor, policy adjustment at the time due to liquidity needs. But as and again, it's managing what's in the money market, what's in your investments, and making sure that we meet that policy objective as far as the amount that we can keep in those different avenues and mediums. So yeah, I think maybe at this time, as David mentioned, we can just leave it as 20%, and as we continue to manage as investments mature in the next couple of months, and then reinvest on those, and then engage the needs for them within the next 12 months, and get a clearer picture of the actual needs.
Did you decide on a number, not to exceed number? I'm sorry, I kind of got distracted for a minute there.
I think 30% is fine. I think 30% would be adequate, being that we're going to reinvest in longer duration. Again, our portfolio is short, and we have the opportunity, because it's short, we can reinvest, and then as we see out, and maybe in the middle of the calendar year, start keeping some of those in cash, as we see where our needs are with the project.
So just to be clear from my perspective, I mean, we'll keep a really sharp eye out on our expenses having to do with the Civic Center, but we're getting pretty close to the short strokes here in the next 4 to 6 months. Really, I think there's certainly going to be ongoing expenses to fit things up, through the end of the year or whatever. But yeah, and so we just make sure that we have some short-term investments that we can roll out, as well as the longer-term investments. But it seems like the investment climate is such that we should take every advantage of that we can for this uptick that's poised. Every investment advisor I talk to, they're all bullish, just like what David was saying.
Yeah.
And if you've got some money to invest, you should invest.
Correct. And I think we're in a better position. I think we're in a good position because we can take advantage of that as with going out in the longer term, and taking advantage with the corporate bonds, with the rates, as they eventually start to go up, we can reinvest. And then we enter that part from May to December. May is usually the last part where we receive our property taxes. So that May to December gap is a big, that's where you're hedging. You got to verify, it's maintaining enough cash and liquidity. So we get to that point it's kind of like a long road, right? May to December from our next influx of property taxes. So it's making sure that we manage that as well, because, you know, when we get our property taxes, that's a great influx of cash. But again, it's, you know, the next one after May, it'll be December.
Yeah, but I'm just looking,
we try to manage that.
just jumping without, I don't mean to jump ahead, but your most recent budget revision says the general fund's going to have a balance of almost $24 million by June 30th. We only owe on the town's portion of the Civic Center, we only have about $6 million left to spend. I mean, it appears to me we're rolling in dough. So
What an image.
well, so I not only don't understand why we need to increase the amount of money market exposure, but I don't understand why we're not going out as far as Cutwater wants to take us to maximize our yield.
And just to tack
No,
on to that question, Robert, are these the only asset classes we can invest in per guidelines, or is there something else that we've chosen not to do, or?
Now, these are the most, it's the corporate bonds, we have, and government securities. There's other avenues, but the most opportunities for the interest rate is the corporate bonds and the money market. I mean, there's CDs that we can invest in, but those are capped at 250,000. You know, CDIC rules, so we can do that. There's repurchase agreements. We don't. There's very minimal ability in those. So yeah, majority of our investment opportunities is in the medium securities and government securities.
By statute, you're capped at fixed income securities. You can't go into equities, you can't go into a lot of the other commodities or any of the other things that typically pay more. So you're really forced by statute into 5 years or less fixed income securities of a certain quality. And you can only have up to 30%. We got it at 29.99% in corporates. And the rest have to be in some form of governmental agency. And
That's the LAIF.
yeah, and that would be LAIF, and that's
LAIF
also
as well.
Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's and all that sort of thing, and the farm credits. And so, and LAIF is much more like a money market fund. It's a little longer, but it's been dropping. So it does sound like your cash flow situation has changed a lot in the last year, and that's great. I mean, that's a place you want to be, right? So you have more cash, and so, you know, maybe we don't need as a big adjustment on the money market side. And if it looks like Robert's cash balance and June's a big month because you just got your cash, you got all your cash in May from taxes, and you still got to make it from June to December. So that's when you start to draw down. So you need some cash on hand. Otherwise, Robert's not going to get paid. So, and those employees hate when you don't pay them. My wife
Neither
used to be.
will
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Or
So,
vice
I mean, you know, you got to keep some cash on hand. But let's start working on getting those bonds that are maturing next week, and we'll get them out and get those out a little bit further. And let's continue to work on the portfolio. And maybe we can represent back in July, and we'll show you what we've done in the portfolio. We'll show you some of the movement we've made, and also we can take another look at the cash situation too.
Well, I don't, excuse me. I don't want to, I certainly don't want to put the kibosh on something that you think is prudent to do, but I would be quite happy raising it from 20% to 30%. And then if that turns out not to be enough, have you come back to us. George, you haven't said anything yet. What are your thoughts on this? You're muted. Unmute.
Oh, George.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. Robert could hear me, but nobody else could.
Right.
My concern is very similar to David's in that, we've got a $17 million annual budget, including of normal capital projects that's absent the town center project. So outflow is about $1.5 million per month. And we go through some dry months as we wait and get paid twice a year. So we need to make sure that that's liquid enough for Robert to access. And if there's any emergencies in that period of time, he needs to be able to access that as well. So it's finding that sweet spot that I'm concerned about.
Do you think that 30% or maybe 40% would give you enough flexibility for the dry spots?
I think certainly 30% would do that. I think as the town center project is in our rear view mirror, we have, debt service and a few things like that we need to be conscious of. And then in 2024, we're going to have a large payout to pay off the COP or 2025, 425. So that's the expectation. So we need to plan for that as well with our long-term investments.
We
Well-
got to make a lot of money on that.
Right.
Is there any further discussion? Because if not, I would like to make a motion. Hearing no further discussion, I would move that we revise the investment policy to change 20% in the maximum amount on money market funds, which is in a paragraph number 9, from 20% to 30%. Do I hear a second for that?
I think Wally tried to second, but he was muted.
We didn't hear a second.
I can second.
Oh, okay.
Me
Thank you.
too. Me too. I agree.
Any further discussion? If not, would you do a roll call vote, please, Robert?
Yes. Chair Walker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sleeth. Yes. Member Polito.
No.
Okay. Member Patil
Yes.
and Member Skolnick.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We have that. We have the
Sorry. Bob,
motion. Thank you.
Bob, would you, do you think that there are other, what can I say? I don't want to say mandates, but do you think that there are other recommendations that we can make that would lessen your concern about the fact that technically they can go to 30%?
Well, no, and I don't have a big concern. I just think we're taking an unnecessary action and we should be trying to maximize our yields so that we've got the dough to pay off the COPs at an early date if that's what we choose to do. So I don't think it's a big deal, but I would have thought it was a big deal if we tried to go to 50% because
Oh, wow.
the numbers don't support it. I just don't think the numbers support any increase, but that's fine.
I guess I view it slightly differently. I view it as sort of a safety valve that it's not that we're planning to use it, but in the event that it becomes necessary because of unforeseen changes, then it's there and we don't have to call together a rush meeting of this committee or the council to get the approvals. That's kind of the way I see it. I don't have the feeling that we're really changing our investment policy much. We're just providing a little more flexibility.
So just to be clear, this recommendation will then go to council for final approval.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So we'll have an opportunity to discuss this at council level.
Yes.
Move on.
Yeah, I think so. Anything else, Robert, on that?
No, that's it. I just want to say, thanks, Dave, for being on the
Sure.
Zoom meeting. And Dave, he appreciates, being able to fly from New York out to California. So, Dave, maybe one of these years, so we'll get you back out here.
I can't wait to start. We've got a hard stop on all travel right now, but I can't wait to start going to see clients again. And maybe 6 months from now. I got my first vaccine yesterday, so and my second one I'll get in early April. So I'm in that category, so I can get them. So you guys take care, and thanks for having me on part of the meeting. I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much, David.
Thanks,
My
Dave.
pleasure.
Have a
Take
good
care.
one. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
So I want to stop for 1 second here. I apologize, but I have another meeting that is starting right now. And there are just two things I wanted to mention before I have to leave. One is, this didn't make it on the agenda, but we did finalize the memo about CalPERS. It was presented to the council in a study session. I think it was very well received. I think that's a fair statement. And so I want you all to, I'm very proud that this committee took that on and got it to a place where it was proper for presentation to the council. And many thanks to Bob Polito, who was the real driver and primary draftsperson of the memo. So, and Robert, would you please send the final version of the memo? I'm not sure that ever got sent out to our committee.
Yeah, I did send it out to the committee.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Right. Well, right. I sent the final version out. I didn't send it to you or Mr. Polito because you had already seen the final version when I sent it. So I had sent it to the remainder of the committee. So I apologize on that. But the committee did get the final version.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Yeah, in the future, Robert, better that you send us something twice than than leaving.
Right. Exactly.
And then, so that was not on the agenda, but I wanted to mention it. And then what we have left is the budget kickoff. And Robert, can this meeting continue if I leave? Should I appoint, should I ask the vice chair to continue the meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wally, would you please take over? I really apologize. I do have the presentation, which I will go through carefully. And Robert or George, if there's anything that you really want to get my attention on, just shoot me an email. I really apologize I have to do this, but got another meeting.
No worries. Thank you. No.
Okay, thank you all.
We appreciate it. Okay, so we want to start on item number 5.
Yes.
So Wally, okay. I'm just gonna
Do you want to bring it
kind
up
of give everyone a brief.
your screen?
Yeah, we're bringing it up right now. On the bringing up the PowerPoint. Let me see. I'm sorry. So I'm trying to.
Robert, were you trying to get the PowerPoint up? I can share that.
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yes. Thank you. Awesome. I know. I'm having issues.
I don't see item 5 yet.
Yeah. I can send you the. Yeah. We can just do that one. All right. This item is the first budget kickoff and overview we've had at our City Council study session in March 3rd. We did a presentation of the kickoff of an overview of our fiscal year 21-22 budget, and basically this was a review focused on a recap of our current fiscal year, preliminary budget assumptions, and the 5-year forecast. And then we go over major expenditure categories and the 5-year forecast going forward. And then we discuss our budget process and discussion as what we have as far as we start our 21-22 budget. And then we go over our budget calendar. So we started off with fiscal year 2021. We presented to the council that our fiscal 2021 had general fund revenues of 16.8 million. With ERAF of 1.86 million, we had a total revenue of 18.75 million. Our fiscal year 2021 general fund expenditures are projected at 15.32 million. This fiscal year, we began our debt service on our COP, and that's 837,000 this year. We paid that in December. It projects excess revenue of 2.59 million. So our projected year-end fund balance for fiscal year 2021 is 23.65 million. The town will meet its reserve requirements for fiscal year 2021, and we project an allocated fund balance beyond the required reserves that is 116% of our expenditures. I just wanted to show you that on this slide on the 23.6 million fund balance, we do meet our reserve requirement, which is the 15 and 20%, and that's a total reserve requirement of 5.3 million. Unallocated reserves is 8.3 million, and that includes our 505,000 for our capital facilities fund. So this 18.3 million is what will be unallocated use towards the town center project. The next slide discusses our general fund major revenue sources. They continue to be property taxes at 70% of our general fund revenue. Building fees is at 9% of general fund revenue, and our ERAF is 7% of our general fund revenue. The next slide just kind of shows on our 5-year forecast, shows these major revenues from 21-22 through 25-26. As you can see, we start off with 15.1 million to 17.89 million in property taxes, building fees, and excess ERAF, total cumulative. Property taxes are projected at 3.5 and 4% in the 5-year forecast. Building fees are projected at 2% in the 5-year forecast. And ERAF is at 1.1 million in 21-22 fiscal year. And in future years, it's projected at 1 million. And just a caveat on this, the state continues to change the landscape of ERAF. So staff believes that, there's some guidelines coming out with the state as far as the interpretation of ERAF use, and the counties are reviewing that. And staff believe that it would be drastic interpretation to say that the town will not receive any excess ERAF going forward. So with that being said, we estimate that because it's unpredictable at this time, but we predict at least 1 million is a safe assumption for the town to receive an excess ERAF going forward. The next one is our general fund other revenues and sources besides our major revenues. So we have sales tax, franchise fees, business license, planning, public works, park, and other revenues. So above revenues, they're projected conservatively between 1 and 2%, or they're based on historical amounts received in the past. So our next slide shows our government major expenditures 5-year forecast. It shows just a relation of what our departments are as far as government as a general fund major expenditures. So you can see police is the highest at 54.7%, and public works is at 15.9% is in the expenditure component for our general fund. The next slide shows our major components of our operation expenses. In the 5-year forecast, our labor costs we're forecasted at 3.5%. And in the last 2 years of the fiscal 5-year forecast, they're at 4%. Pension costs in 21-22 for local miscellaneous is at 11.06%. Currently, in fiscal year 2021, the normal cost is 11.19%. So it's a reduction in the normal cost for 21-22. And our local safety for 21-22 is at projecting at 25.59%. It's currently at 25.54%. And again, just want to mention that these actual amounts is 1% for miscellaneous less and 3% less for public safety. So for example, 25% is what it's showing, but our actual cost for the town because of the 3% less is about 22%. And again, this is the pickup that we passed on to the employees a couple of years ago. The 3% max for public safety and 1% for miscellaneous. Regarding another expenditure, major expenditure for the town is our OPEB. Currently, there's 8.1 million in the trust, and the town had allocated up to 5 million to the trust, so it's at 8.1 million. Our current OPEB liability is 10.43 million as of June of 2020. So we have a net OPEB of about 2.3 million net OPEB liability based on the 8 million that we have in the trust currently. The expenses, operation expenses, we forecasted between 4.5% to 3.5% in the 5-year forecast. The UAL for CalPERS is 400,000 for miscellaneous, and public safety is 1,029,000 for fiscal year 21-22. So it's about 1.4 million for the UAL component for the upcoming fiscal year.
So Robert, the local miscellaneous CalPERS pension allocation of 11.06, it actually went down to that number, right?
Correct. Yes, it went down to that number. The current year is 11.19%, 2021. So yeah, the 21-22 it reduced, and then from the police side it went up 0.4% to 25.59. And then major components of operational costs, we have significant professional service contracts. So we have building contract and IT services. MCE does our public works services throughout town. We have contract custodial services, park event services. We also have contract planning services and legal services as well. So those are major components of our operational costs. The next slide shows where we're headed in our funded accrued liability. And these numbers are based off of our CalPERS actuarial, latest CalPERS actuarial reports. So 21-22, we estimate 1.4 million. And fiscal year 25-26, it's estimated at 1.8 million. Again, the UAL amounts are invoiced at the beginning of each fiscal year. Our current fiscal year UAL payments are about 1.1 million. So the difference in our 21-22 budget's increase of about 237,000. Next slide shows our reserve balances. So currently, as we mentioned, we have committed fund balances in our general fund. So 15% is our emergency reserve, and it's as actual general fund operating expenditures. Our operating reserve is 20% of operating expenditures, and then any remaining is considered the unallocated fund balance. So that's not reserved, committed, or specifically assigned. And currently, as we're all aware, the unallocated fund balance is being used for the town center, although it's not budgetarily assigned. Again, just want to make sure that the reserve requirements are not one time each year, and they are one time each year, and they're not cumulative. So it's 15% of our operations going forward, and 20%. The next is the summary of the forecast. So the 21-22, this shows our total revenues, and then our salaries, operation expense, our CalPERS, UAL, debt service, and our town center expected expenditures. So our net fund balance is a negative 11.6 million in 21-22, but going through 25-26, it's a positive 1.9 million. I just want to point out on this slide, again, it shows our debt service of 861,000, through from 21-22 through 23-24. However, in 24-25, there's the COP call option. That's what George had mentioned earlier about what we have to pay in the next coming years. So that 4.7 million is the call option component of our COP, and we intend to meet that obligation. So just again, ERAF is a major revenue. These above amounts are not actual budget expectations year over year. It's just a forecast. Annual requirements will change as we go through the budget process. So just bringing that up to the fund balance projections, as was mentioned earlier, the 21-22, our beginning fund balance of 23.6 million, projecting of our 11.6 million expenditures or under, and our estimated fund balance is 12 million. And of that 12 million, you'll see a remaining unallocated balance of 5.9 million. And all the way up to 25-26, you see it at 6.5 million. So what this does not include, so our general fund allocations to capital projects beyond the town center in fiscal year 21-22, this number does not include that. There's a one-time payoff of Bayfront Canal that will be updated in our budgets next budget session. Currently, we have a 1.3 million loan obligation with the county. It's a leaseback option, and the payments are about 237,000 per year, and those will be deducted through our property tax revenue. What this does include, the slide shows, is the additional allocation to the building facilities capital reserve of 505,000 each year. That's in that in the 12 million reserve balance. So the remaining unallocated fund balance, it's a rolling balance. So as we had mentioned, Mr. Puglia mentioned that our fund balance, general fund, has a reserve amount that's growing. And that is correct. From 21-22, you see it go from 5.9 million to 6.58 million. Again, this is the unallocated fund balance. So this would be used based on council priorities. We can use it towards capital projects or other priorities and needs for the council.
But Robert, one important note, as you look at that chart, yes, it goes from 5.9 to 7.8 in 2023-24, but it drops to 4.8 million in 24-25, where we have to pay off COP at that mark in the call.
Right.
When reality, because it's
Right.
not a cumulative balance, it's a rolling balance, we only really have about $4.8 million of unallocated general funds to go to capital projects or something else over the next few years.
Correct. Yes, and thanks for pointing that out, George. Yes, it's a rolling balance. So in that 24-25 year, we have a big capital a payment of 4.7 million. So our unallocated balance that we could use for other purposes is only going to be 4.8 million. And we will revisit that every year as we have council priorities and objectives. We'll look at if there's an allocated balance, that a portion of that needs to be allocated to other priorities and needs. So the next slide is just kind of shows you the discussions and the budget calendar for the 21-22 fiscal year. Our operations budget is at the April 7th study session. That's the general fund operations budget. The capital improvement budget will be at the May 5th study session, and we'll bring it back again. All the budget study session in June will include all other revenues and funds for the town, and we'll discuss any changes, whether to the CIP or to also the general fund budget. And again, we anticipate the final budget adoption will be at the June 16th council meeting. So there's
And
several
traditionally, these meetings are advertised as joint meetings with the finance committee to allow members of the finance committee to attend and participate.
Correct. So the April 7th study session will be a joint study session with the finance committee and the city council. That's the one that's coming up. That's the next budget session.
Doesn't mean you have to attend. It just means if you do, you can participate.
Correct. Yes. Yes, it's not mandatory. It's just correct. If you do attend, it's the opportunity for the finance committee to participate along with the city council. And
Go
that's
back to that.
pretty
schedule,
much it.
These dates. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
So yeah, April 7th, Wednesday, April 7th will be our general fund operations budget study session. The CIP budget will be at the May 5th study session. And then the budget study session in June 2nd will include all our special revenue funds and all our internal service funds. And then we'll discuss any other changes if there were to the general fund. And also the CIP will bring back if there's any additions or changes and priorities for the CIP budget. We'll bring that as well on the June 2nd study session. And then the final adoption will just be on the 16th. Regular council meeting is June 16th. And that's it. That was just the kickoff budget session. Lost power there. I had to switch to different medium, but no, that's what that we have for the budget kickoff. It's just an update on the 5-year forecast and kind of an outlook. And again, those numbers will change as we get into the budget study session, but it's good for us to have an outlook of where we look to be in the next several fiscal years. But going forward, we'll be focusing on the 21-22 budget going forward. Any questions?
Yeah, the library, the money for the library is in two piles. We have some of the money and the county still has some of the money, correct?
Partially correct. Last year we had some of the money and they had some of the money. However, now we have all the money. The library paid us up front. The remaining amount for the library project, they advanced us our funds. They advanced us additional $5.3 million. So we now have the money, all the money for the project, and the library is not holding any more money for us.
So that those monies are included in the numbers that are in the LAIF, the 20 million bucks that
Correct.
we have in LAIF, as well as the money we have with Cutwater. And
Correct.
And they're not, none of them are commingled in the general fund. They're all in the library fund, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Our investments are pooled, but our funds, each fund has a cash balance,
Right.
and we keep to that. Correct. Any questions?
I don't have the agenda in front of me. What is the next item, Robert?
So the next item is just a recap of the. We're going to have a tour of the city. It's a receive and file of the town center construction project summary report. This is just an update of where we're at on the town center expenditures, and then it's an optional visit and tour of the Atherton town center project. I know I have this on our agenda last several meetings, just to give the committee an opportunity to visit the site. The building is up, there's walls, they're putting up doors, windows. So I'm trying to give the committee an opportunity to see the site because our project manager, Marty Henneman, says that July is the date that we will be moving in to the new town center. So in a couple months, you can see it now, or you can see it when it's complete. So that's just an opportunity for that. But yeah, I just wanted to submit the town center payment progress and change order. And that's what you see here on the screen where we're at. You can see the town and the library component, and then all the approved change orders to the project. We had a contingency of about $2 million, almost $2.8 million on the town center, and the library is $1.8 million. But as you can see, our change orders to date are on $768,000. And this kind of shows there's a roll up of the approved change orders that we've had to date. And then there's also the payment requests. You can see the payment requests. There's 29 payment requests. We're up to payment request 21. We just received payment request 22, but this is where we've paid up to on the project. So the town shares, you can see on this, the total amount we paid so far is 28 million, 28.8 million, 22.8 million. The initial project bid was 28.7 million. There's a net change orders to the town center side of 273,000, brings up to the updated project cost of 28 million. So we're about 6.7 million available left on the project on the town side. On the library side, we paid about 11.46 million, and the initial project bid was 18.3 million. Net change orders of 494,000 brings us to a new amount of 18.8 million. So about 8 million left in change on that on the library side. And again, the total project was 47 million of the project. So great big milestone for the town. And to my amaze, we're getting closer to the end of getting the drawdown and the pay down on the project. So we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And then there's a section there that shows the contributions from donations that we've received from Atherton now, about 2.1 million for design of the project, and then we've received about 3,075,000 for the construction portion of the project. And then there's other donations from other Athertonians, gracious donations from various members of the community. You can see 500,000, 409,000, 49,000 from various, 50,000 from Orchard Foundation, and another 225,000 from the Goldman Foundation, for a total about 3.9 million we received in donations, including the Atherton now.
And the best part,
so
Robert,
just,
you missed the best part, the percent complete based on
right.
dollars, 72%, and the target
Yeah.
for completion, where they should be at this moment in time, is also 72%. So they're on target.
Right, on target and on time. And like I said, Marty, from the beginning, it was always July 1st for the project. And yeah, we had some delays, but Marty's holding us to that. He's telling us, yep, July we're going to move in. And yes, the project percentage completion, I like seeing that, because that means we're almost paid up for it, you know. So it's a lot better breathing than before when we started on this project. Any questions?
No, except Robert, if he delivers on time, I want an introduction so he can help finish my home construction that's going on.
Sounds good. Marty's really good. He's really good on it, and he's big on that. You know, he wants to meet the time, and he's a great guy. I will, definitely. I'll tell him, hey, if you meet the time, we got another job for you. So definitely we'll do that.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate your.
Robert, and the next item
welcome.
is the dates. I think that are we meeting on Wednesday, April 7th? Is that a meeting with
Yes.
the council study
That's
session?
the council,
So it's
the joint
Wednesday.
session. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it was for the committee, correct. Just announcing the next meeting date for the finance committee. Again, as George alluded to, if you wish to attend, you can. It's not mandatory, but the city council will be having a study session on April 7th.
Okay.
And then when is the next finance committee meeting?
April
The
7th.
next one will be,
That's
yeah,
the
April
study
7th
session,
joint
right?
session. Right.
Okay.
The next one will be May 11th. May 11th will be the next finance committee meeting, but again, we may also make the CIP budget, which is May 5th, a joint study session also for the finance committee if they so wish to attend. But our next standing, just alone finance committee meeting will be May 11th.
Great.
We have a motion to adjourn, or we got something else, Robert?
Well, I just wanted to just see if there's any committee members that would like to meet to go do the tour of the town center. I just wanted to make sure. I'm going to head out that way, to meet with Marty. So if do any of the committee members like to go to see the tour of the site today, or if you can't, let me know of another time and I can arrange for a different time. If just send me an email if you're interested, and I can arrange that so you can do a tour with Marty, our project construction manager on the project.
Thank you, Robert. I will not be able to be there today.
Okay. All right. So I see none, but yeah, I keep bringing this up because I would love for you all to see it. It's only going to be built once, and once it's built, that's it. You can't see how it started and how it progressed. So I just wanted to give you all that opportunity. But again, please let me know if you like to have if you have an alternative time that you would like to go see it, and I'll be happy to arrange that for you.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. I guess we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
I don't get to do that.
We need a committee member.
Yeah, second.
Okay. Thank you. And I think everybody says aye.
Nice to see
Bye.
everyone. Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks, all.
Thank you,
Nice
Robert.
to see